Yes.
Okay, we are here.
Ah, okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our discussion tonight. And today we are privileged that even most of us are going to learn from our own Kamau Mwangi, soon to be doctor. And we are going to have a very interesting topic. We are going to discuss about the role of young people in church. So, Mr. Dominic Kamau has written a very elaborative article that we are going to discuss tonight. So, before we go through the document, so I'll invite each and everyone to introduce themselves once more, and then we start. We start with Opolo.
Thank you, Mr. Kimaya, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We are ready to learn from our own Mr. Dominic, and yes, that help our young brothers down there. I'm Cornelius Opolo, Team YGI, former National Youth Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Kimaya, Cornelius, and our guest speaker today. My name is Sir John Ngethemboti, a graduate student from the University of Nairobi. I'm looking forward to learn more from our doctor-to-be. Thank you.
Okay, what's any story? This is a panel. There's no learning from anybody.
We are learning.
So, welcome, John. I'm also here to learn from William Kimaya, John Botti, and Cornelius Opolo, as we discuss the role of youth in the church together and try to figure out what that means. And maybe even possibly we can start with the whole question of faith and religion, and then we explore that with respect, and then we can see where we can go. We don't have to exhaust the whole topic today, as far as I can tell. So that could be helpful. Yeah, okay. Back to you, William.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, for that introduction. And so, as you've said, that we are going to have that discussion, but I think I'll just invite you to explain a bit of this article that you've written, because I was going through it, and Yani, it's just an awesome article with the 12 roles of young people in the church. Though I don't think we'll be able to go through the 12 roles. I don't think we'll be able to go through the 12 roles and finish them today. But if we don't, then I believe we can take it up or pick it up from there next time. So, Bwana Dominic, maybe if you can just briefly explain this document, and then from there we start with the role number 1.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for the chance, for the opportunity, and for the chance to talk about this. So this article was a result of I was requested to give a talk on the role of youth in the church, and that's why I wrote this article, which ended up being helpful to seemingly to quite a number of people as per the feedback I have received, we thank God for that. So now, even before we speak about the role of the youth in the church, we need to ask ourselves, what's the role, first of all, of religion? Basically, what is the role of faith, as far as I can tell? And the question I find answered by a certain cardinal called Newman, who wrote a very nice book. And in it, he says, people long for different, people have certain desires that they cannot take away. And this is something closely also said by St. Augustine, when he says that our hearts are made for God, and they are restless until they rest in Him. And what basically that means is there are things, or there are certain desires in us that however we try to fulfill them, we cannot fill them with anything that is created. And this is very fascinating in 3 ways. One is, if you try to say, okay, wealth might be the case, or power might be the case, or honor might be the case, or pleasure might be the case, then you realize that even if I gave you pleasure constantly, after some time you'll get bored. Even people who are very wealthy, they're not necessarily happy because they have that wealth. And good people and bad people can get wealthy. So it's not something that is fulfilling entirely by itself. And so that is one level that we see that the things that the world has to offer, they only reach a certain point and then they go beyond, So faith is like, if you go online and you want to find out about Dominic, and there's so much about Dominic, and say, okay, from what I've read online, I can tell who Dominic is. And then after some point, you meet me, or you meet a certain person you've read about online, let's say the president or someone you admire. So you're like, I know this person from all the postings and on the net. And then you meet this person and they tell you something so personal that is not on the net. But you have no evidence whatsoever if what they're saying is true or not. But then you make a decision to believe them. That is faith, If you introduce your mother to me, I have no evidence whatsoever if she's your mother. I just believe it because I choose to trust you. That's not being unreasonable. That's being foolish. It is really realizing that, I'm going to take this person at their word. I'm going to believe what they said. And that's precisely what we see in the Old Testament. God has been acting. We have a picture of God. And then he comes and says something so personal in the person of Jesus. And then we say, I am going to believe that. I'm going to believe that. I'm going to make that decision to believe that person. But then there is something about human beings as well that's very interesting. Our mind constantly wants to know. We want to know. We ask, what is that? Where does it come from? We want to know the truth. And Jesus comes and says, well, I am the truth. And then we always want to know what is good for me. How should I act properly? What should I do? And Jesus says, I am the way. And then we want to know how can I live without the fear of death, without being destroyed, without this coming to an end. And Jesus comes and says, don't worry about it. I am the life. And then we wonder, how do I know if what I believe is the truth? How do I know that without doubt? How do I know? And Jesus says, I have left my disciples. And and he says of the disciples, and these are our bishops today, whoever listens to you listens to me. And that is powerful as far as I can tell, because then I can believe what the church teaches with certainty, without wondering whether if this is what Jesus would want. I can believe that. I can hold on to that, in spite of the betrayal of Judas that runs through the history of the church, from Judas to the bishops and priests today, to the denial of St. Peter that runs among the bishops, among the priests, among Christians, all the way today until Jesus comes. With all these, I can still believe that what Jesus said is true, and and that for us, as far as I can tell, is good. And that's what makes, first of all, we need to therefore to realize the role of the church. Therefore, it is to the Second Vatican II, the meeting of the bishops, one of the documents that they wrote was called the Light of the Nations. Now, the light of the nation, the church is not the light of the nations. Christ is the light of the nations. The work of the church is to carry out the light of the nation, this light to the nations. And so the church becomes our mother. Why? Because she is the bride of Christ. She gives birth to us with the waters of baptism. When you are born, your mother, the first thing that comes out is the waters. We say the water has broken. For you to become a Christian, the church does the same. Waters of baptism. So you become a Christian just the way you become a human being. And so the church becomes a mother and teacher. Makes you Christian and teaches you who Christ is. And that brings us to the first role of being the role of a young person, and all of us in the Christian faith or in the church. And therefore the first role is to seek Christ. Saint John, no, not Saint John, but John the Evangelist, not John the Evangelist, John the Baptist. When he sees Christ, he tells the disciples, that is the Lamb of God in the Gospel of John. So our work is, first of all, to see Christ, to meet Christ, you know, and that is very, very important. And therefore, to be holy becomes our adventure. And Pope Benedict XVI said that holiness is not in never sinning. Holiness is in rising up every time we fall. And I find that very, very useful. And at the same time, Faustina, the one who Christ revealed himself to as divine mercy, says, if God is constantly willing to forgive us, we are the ones who are not always ready to accept that forgiveness. And that is something that we struggle with, whether God can work through us when we are imperfect, when we are still struggling with sin, with all kinds of sexual sins, with all kinds of selfishness. Can God still work beautiful things in us? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. And one of the problems of prosperity gospel is it makes so many people believe that unless they are perfect, they cannot be blessed. There's something wrong with you. That's why you're suffering, you know? So the church exists for that. Okay, I hope role number one is more or less clear. So I'll take role two, and then if you want to have a discussion, we can discuss a bit around that, and then we go on. And so the first thing, as I've mentioned, is to meet Christ. We want to meet Christ as the first role, you know? That is what we want. That is the supreme law of the church. It's called Salus Salus Anomarus, if I'm not wrong, Anomarum. So the salvation of the souls. That's the first. That's the way the church exists. To be a bridge. The word pontiff, the way we call the Pope, means bridge. So the pontiff, he is the bridge builder. He builds bridges between people and Christ, between people and each other. Supreme pontiff. You know, he builds bridges, not walls, bridges, brings people together. So, okay. And this brings us to the second. Once we meet Christ, we get to know him. Just like the way when you meet, if you're a guy, you are looking for a girl to marry, you meet the girl. Yes, and then you start to know and to love that girl. The same thing applies to a girl meeting a guy. You meet the guy first, role number one. Number two is you start to know this person and you learn to love them as who they are. Okay. And here, Pope Francis reminds us of three very important things: that God loves us. And God loving us is not an intellectual thing. Now, for many of us, our experience of God is closely related with how we experienced love from our parents. If we experienced love that was not emotional, that was distant, the same thing we experience when we are trying to experience the love of God. We don't feel it because we did not grow up with parents who made us feel loved. They never even said they love us, possibly. And so we're in our faith journey, we struggle with the same thing, to feel loved. We know it here, but we don't feel it. Huh? And that is a journey, it's a submission. And then Pope Francis says this, something that you need to know about Christ is that he saves you. He says that love is greater than all our problems, our flaws, our sins, and he forgives us. Pope Francis says God never tires of forgiving us. It is we who tire of asking for forgiveness. And then finally he said Jesus is alive. In fact, his letter, Christ is alive, Christus vivit, is supposed to be Christ lives. Not even Christ is alive, Christ lives. So he is living right now at this point in time. And this is what makes it so beautiful, that he lives right now at the moment. But following Christ is not easy, because he says in the Gospel of Mark, well, you gotta die. You need to deny yourself. You cannot follow me with your own conditions. So he says, anyone who wants to be my disciple has to deny themselves, take up their cross, follow me, deny yourself. That means you cannot have an agenda. So Jesus asks us everything from us. Deny yourself. Don't come here in your terms. I'm only going to follow you if the priests in our church behave properly. I'm only going to follow you if no, there are no conditions. I'm going to follow you even when I don't feel like it. I'll try to. I may lapse sometime. And then it is taking up your cross. Where does the cross lead to? Calvary. So what that means is there is a crucifixion that we have to go through also as disciples, right? It's not you're not going into a Mercedes. It's a crucifixion. And then following, when you're following someone, it means you're not on their side. It means you're behind. That means when they stop, you stop. When they move fast, you move fast. When they slow down. You don't move ahead of them. And that's very challenging because sometimes, like Jesus in the boat, he sleeps. And you're like, Jesus, wake up. Things are so bad, but he is asleep. You know? And that becomes very rough because you're looking around and you're praying and he's not responding because he's asleep. And it becomes scary. I don't know if there is something that you want to say before I go to role number 3, if there's some sort of a response, or should I if you want to keep on, that is okay. Maya or Cornelius?
Okay, now maybe just a bit, I'll also ask a question that the first role, they've said the first role is to meet Christ. And then from just the example that you concluded with, they are saying kind of giving condition that if my pastor is not behaving well, then I'll not follow. So the first role is to meet Christ. Do you think that it is the role of the young people, or it is their role to seek and then they're being guided? So, or rather, how do we meet Christ? Are we supposed to be guided, or how do we do it?
Right. Yeah. So in Francis speaks about the importance of having Eli or Ella in our lives, and he is using that from the Old Testament, where Samuel, this young man, is sleeping, and he hears someone calling Samuel. So he wakes up and he goes to Prophet Eli or Eli, and he says, "You called me," and Prophet Eli says, "No, I didn't call you." So this happens, and the third time, Eli says, "Look, I'm not the one who is calling you. If Prophet Eli realizes there's something more here, and says, if you hear this voice again, says, 'Here I am, Lord.'" Right. So for Francis, it would be ideal, yes, if young people receive guidance, and that's the role of the priests. The priests have the 3 roles. One is to govern. The other one is to sanctify, and the other one is to prophesy. And prophesy is not to tell the future; it's to guide. So if that should be the ideal, that should be the ideal. But the beautiful thing about, at least in the Catholic Church, is there is a separation between the individual and the teaching. Right. So if I am still struggling with the quality of behavior of my priest, I can present that as a prayer to God, and I can sit quietly and say my rosary and go for adoration and try to focus on Christ instead of the person of the priest. Because, well, the ideal situation is when the priest is able to guide you, not scandalize you. And Jesus, I think this is one of the sins that Jesus does not mention forgiveness for. He says anyone who causes any of the little ones to sin should, it's better for them to have a stone tied on their neck and put, drowned, basically. This is one of the sins that Jesus proclaims no mercy for. And we know the little ones in the example of Christ refers, first of all, yes, to children, but secondly, to people of weak faith, people who were seeking Christ. So scandalizing intentionally or causing to sin people who are looking for Christ is seen as a very, very grave sin. And so, yes, I would agree that young people have a right, to use the words of the Pope. They have a right to be guided. They have a right to be guided. It's unfortunate that we live in times and occasions where, instead of that happening, there's a tendency towards some priests becoming careerists, So they're only joining priesthood not because of service, but they are joining because of the social status priesthood gives. And I don't know how many people might say during this coronavirus, my parish priest called to pray with me, to check on me. I am very doubtful if there are many people who would say that that has happened to them, but that should be the ideal as far as I can tell. And I think in many other churches, this is what is happening, and which is a good thing in other churches that is happening, but it should happen in the Catholic Church as far as I can tell. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dominic. I never knew about the first two roles, that they're real roles. I thought, in fact, the first role of seeking Christ and then to know and to love Christ, I never knew them as a role. I don't know.
I think you're hanging up. You're hanging a bit.
I don't know. I could have placed them, but for that elaborative answer. So, sorry.
Oh, I had lost you there for a moment, but you're back. You're back now.
Oh, sorry. I'm saying that thank you very much for that elaborative. I didn't know about the first two roles, if they were role or where to categorize them. And it's now fine with me. And thank you. I said that I'm here to learn today. I'm not here to contribute or to ask questions, but I'm here to learn. So I don't know if Apollo doesn't have any question, then we can go to role number 3. And then to our viewers, also feel free to ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dominic. That's really very, very powerful. And I also never knew a lot about seeking Christ and to know Him. Maybe something, Dominic, on Christ is alive, chapter 2, Jesus ever young. And there is something here Francis was talking about. And he say the Lord is calling us to enkindle stars in the night of other young people. Will we relate this to seeking of Christ also?
No. That would be like the last role about going forth, because what that statement means, to enkindle. To enkindle means it's what you do, like when a fire is dying, and then you blow the fire, you put some fire, you enkindling the fire. It was dying, you enkindling. So that's more of witnessing now. Yeah, it's more of witnessing, being there, showing, and that's one of the roles that we be observing. So I think firstly is to get first of all for you to meet Christ, just meet them like that, and then the second role is, okay, this Christ that I have met, can I know more about Him? Because I think many of us simply know Christ, but I don't know how many of us have taken actually the intentional work of trying to know what does Christ mean. That's what I would say. So we'll reach you into that. I don't know if that is satisfying for now. Right. Great. So then, of course, maybe for those who are viewing this or might view this in the future, we are speaking about the role of the youth more in the Catholic sense. So if you find me more oriented towards that. The role number 3 is to imitate the Queen. Imitate the Queen. Right. Now, recently we've had the Queen Elizabeth lose Prince Philip, and people are joking how once a queen does not be, the queen's husband does not become king, but a king's wife becomes queen. Right. That's very, very fascinating. And and of course, the explanations to that, basically being the role king always entails more power than the queen. So that's why that cannot happen. But here, when it comes to Christ, we in the church, we have a queen. We have a queen. Welcome, Rosaline Ogaye. Yeah, we have awesome. So anyway,
thank you.
Yeah. So we are talking about role number 3, imitating the Queen, and I want you to imagine a young girl who is living so many centuries ago, 21 centuries ago, She is around 14, 15 years, which, by the way, that was a girl who was, you know, for these days, you know, that time it was already expected that you get married by then. In a culture that says if you get pregnant before marriage, you're gonna be killed, basically killed. And then she says yes, you know, she says yes. And then that is what Pope Francis now is asking. Her yes was that of someone willing to take a risk, to, you know, to risk everything she had with no security than the certainty of knowing that she was a bearer of a promise. And Pope Francis is asking, do you see yourself as a bearer of a promise? Now, I want you to imagine that Mary there is a risk of being stoned to death. There's a risk of Joseph leaving her. There's so much at risk. She's a poor girl. She doesn't have a lot going for her. Right? And you can imagine Mary saying, an angel, Gabriel. Like, imagine your wife saying there was another guy in my house and he told me this. And first question, what were you doing with the guy in the house? So there is a lot at risk. So sometimes I think that the imitation of the queen is not just imitating and saying, this is a lady who, just like us, sometimes you have no reason to continue believing. When you look at your own life, there's a point you might say, I don't believe there's a promise that I'm carrying. I don't believe there's much that I am carrying. I don't believe I no longer believe that my life is worthwhile or there is a purpose to my life. But for Francis is saying, don't let challenges and the sins that you commit be a reason for you to say no. Right? So that is something to say. So in imitating the queen, following her, you know, closely and powerfully. Role number 4, and this is a tricky one, finding your value and voice. Right? And I'm going to read a quote here from that article, which Pope says, young people must help to keep the church young by daring to be different, right? To testify to the beauty of generosity, of service, of purity, of perseverance, forgiveness, fidelity, to our personal vocation, to prayer, to justice, to love of the poor, to social friendship, right? And he says there are many reasons for sure that might discourage us, you know, even push us from wanting to be in the church. And some of them are the sexual scandals and financial scandals, and a clergy, as he says, that does not want to accompany the young people, even they don't know how to accompany young people. Sometimes the young people, as one lady said, are treated like A or B in the church. So there is every good reason. Sometimes the church does not explain what she teaches properly through the bishops and priests and anyone who are ministers in church. You know, so our role as young people is to find our voice, therefore. And we don't want to find our voice like, let me say, Martin Luther. No, we are not finding the church. We don't want to renew the church by leaving it. No, we stick with her. We remain loyal, even with all the discouragement. Sometimes we need to take a break. Yes, you might want to take a break. That's okay. But then even so, you remain a loyal son or daughter. So we try to heal the church from within, you know, as St. Francis of Assisi or St. Teresa of Avila, who reformed the church from within, right? So that is how we are hoping to go, you know, today. So John is back, karibu sana. And so role number 5, as we go on, hopefully the others will be able to join us as we go on. So role number 5 is find identity and worth in the church. You know, what is our identity? So finding our value, our voice, and then finding our identity and worth. You know, so, and what that means is, even as I try to follow Christ, I need to find out how do I grow properly as an individual, such that I am capable enough to follow Christ, right? So, and here we need to understand ourselves, what we call intrapersonal growth, our sexual health, our mental health, physical health, you know, taking care of your body and your, you know, our mental health. Then interpersonal, learning how to live with people, learning how to develop mature relationships where I can trust and be trusted, where I have proper role models, right? Okay. How to live with others without being obsessed with being liked. That is personal maturity now. Okay. So don't separate and say, okay, now I'm doing matters of the church. Now I'm trying to learn how to grow my self-awareness, as if these two things are separate. I am trying to increase my self-awareness, my emotional intelligence, in order to be a better disciple. That's what that means, right? Number 3, critical consciousness. And here I would like to differentiate between two people, Eve and Mary. Eve doubted whether God has said they should not eat of the tree at the center of the garden. Satan made her doubt that. But Mary asked a question that looks like a doubt. How can I become pregnant and yet I don't know a man to say? Okay, that is verifying. First one is doubting. Second one is verifying. And so to ask to be critical of what the church teaches in order to know better is not the same thing as doubting what the church teaches. Second one is mature. I need to find out. I need to find out the truth. So to question your religious beliefs is not the same thing as doubting them, right? Pope Francis says even asking God why, that's a good thing. There are people who have been taught not to be angry with God. How can you be angry with God? But that is okay as far as our Catholic faith is concerned, because I can be angry with my father. That does not mean I don't love him. I can be angry with my mother. I can be angry with my big brother. That's okay. Any relationship that you're in that matters will have all the kinds of relationships, not just happy ones. Not just happy ones. In fact, the only people we don't get angry with are people we don't know. If you're walking in the market and someone insults you, you possibly assume it's just a madman and you go on. But if your brother, your sister, your sibling, your parent, you have all kinds of emotions. That's how we relate with God. We don't have only one emotion. Sometimes we get angry, and that's okay. That's okay. So questioning your beliefs. Why does the church teach this way? Why? And I want to know better. Then there is holy obedience. Holy obedience is different from unholy disobedience or holy disobedience. Holy obedience here is where I am able to say what I need to say to people in authority and yet recognize their authority. I can be truthful to them without being a coward, a slave to them. That's very, very important. Too many people, especially in the employment circles, you are obedient because you're too scared of, losing a job, and for good reason. It's tough time. So you're like, I'm just going to persevere this horrible boss because where do I go from here? But then holy obedience is where I'm able to obey my boss or the leader and still say what I have in mind properly and in a healthy manner. Okay. Something else here, still under finding your worth, is developing a proper self-worth. What is the basis of my worth? Today, there are so many people who have based their worth on, unfortunately, on wealth or fame and all that. And when their video or whatever they have posted online does not get sufficient likes, they really feel horrible because it is based on that. Okay, if they get poor, if they start getting old, you see people getting Botox and all other, physical enhancing drugs and operations, right? Or talent. And even you see others who base themselves on tribe or race and they reject everybody else. Okay, where do you base? Ephesians 2:10 says we are God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus. That's who we are, God's masterpiece. And then here, still on role number 5 of finding your identity and what is finding your vocation. God has a plan for each one of us. God does not control our destiny. And this is a very, very important concept. People say that, God is in control of everything, but God does not control your destiny. No, he doesn't. It is you to choose. That's the cost of freedom. Our freedom is real and it is brutal. It's so real and brutal that we can reject God. That is how serious it is. It is so serious that we can reject God. So God is not in control of your destiny. No. He is willing to help you. St. Augustine says, God created you without you, but he cannot save you without you. That means he does not control your destiny. And finally, to speak up. And here Pope Francis reminds us of the importance of speaking up against evil. Evil multiplies when good people do nothing, a certain philosopher said, whom I cannot remember at this point. So there is evil finding its way in the church and the society. Instead of walking away and, okay, I don't want to speak up again as a priest, we can speak things out in a manner that is possible. Of course, taking into proper caution and all that. Talk about it, exercise the devil by truthful speech. When you speak truthfully, there is some power to it. If you look at the whole chapter, 1 of Genesis, especially the creation story, God creates by speaking. And so there is power in when you speak and you speak the truth, you create a whole new world, And okay. I don't know if there is some suggestions or questions so that I don't end up speaking to myself. Or additions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Even have a perspective.
Wait, Dominic, thank you very much. You are even making me think or rethink of my catechism classes, because I was told that whatever church teaches is true, and you shouldn't question, you are not supposed to question. And I think that is also the mentality that young people have grown and knowing that you are not supposed to question anything from the church. And so thank you very much for explaining that, because I've always believed, and I think I've always been reserving my question that I have, because I was taught that you're not supposed to question anything from the church. And I believe most of the young people, that is the same problem that they are going through. And that's why you find that as a young person, you don't have any solution. So the only solution you have is to left. I mean, to leave the faith and wendo jipange. Niku left too, by the way. So thank you very much for that. And I think that's also one thing you may get clear. So maybe I'll just read some questions here. In fact, I had one. Okay, I was asked one before when I posted the poster, and I see somebody has asked it here. So let me just read Kiasi. Rosemary Ribeiro is saying that she's tuned in, and is tuned in. Waithera Gibu anauliza that we share the link. Unfortunately, you already have the link. So Margaret Ngumo is saying that she's tuned in, and then Carol Lee is saying that she's tuned in, but she's asking a question here, I think, and then she has directed it to Dominic George. She's saying, how can the youth be involved or engaged in church, especially during this pandemic and lockdown on the churches in various counties? And then Jacinta Mwo is saying that tuned in from Thika. And then Kamau Mwangi, if we are God masterpiece, then why does he let us suffer, yet we are his own children? Just like if you as a father to your kids, you won't let them suffer. And then I think it is the same thing that she has asked. And then especially Catholic youth. Oh, that is Carolee is saying especially Catholic youth. So those are two questions for you, Dominic. Before I ask mine,
right,
that will be complicated.
Right. Okay. The first question about what you can do during the time of the Vatican, during the time of COVID, Vatican had organized something, maybe you could an example, where they work with the young people in Italy to call old people and check on them, and even visit them with proper health guidelines. So yes, let us not look at getting involved in the church in terms of going to the parish. It can be like reaching out and calling people who are lonely or living by themselves, especially older people, right? It could be creating a WhatsApp where you talk like youth groups, just to ensure that people are working properly. We are having 12 million Kenyans at least having mental health issues. 12 million out of 48. That is 1 in 4 Kenyans. So there's a lot that can. So I think one of the things that I find among people is there is this element that, and I think is an element of materialism, I could say. People tend to think that charity is giving things, but I can be charitable with my time, and that is a lot of charity by itself. I can listen, I can motivate, I can encourage, I can call up people, and that is okay. I can say nice things to people who have helped me. Maybe say during this time, I will send something, a gratitude letter or text to somebody who has been very helpful to my life. So giving your time is charity. It's not that you don't always have to give things for you to say I'm charitable. I can give time, right? So how can I give time? I can check, we can create, as I said, you can create a network among the young people in your parish, wherever you want to check on each other. Very, very helpful. People are going through a very rough time. Maybe in the parish, young people can come together and say, can we be sending 100 shillings every month to each other? Okay, so let's say this month we are sending John 100 shillings. So we are 5 of us. So John gets 500 shillings. Then next week he sends 100 shillings. That goes to, let's say, Cornelius or Guy. So it's all a matter of operating. How do we agree in our circles to operate properly? Okay, so that's what I would say in that question. The question number 2, on the question of evil. The church says evil is a mystery. That means it's not very easy to grasp the whole question of evil, but I'll try to respond to it as responsibly as I can. There are people in our lives who have chosen, let's say like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, by their own choice to stand up against evil. And because of that, very, very many people have benefited. And at the same time, there are people who have chosen evil, like Idi Amin and King Leopold, who killed 10 million Congolese. Right. So the first thing that we need to realize is, when Aaron, the priest, when he stood in front of Israelites, I'm forgetting from which book, and he said, I place in front of you death and life. What do you choose? What do you choose? And so there are 2 things that we need to realize here, that my freedom, God gives us freedom in such a brutal manner, in the sense that it is so real. And God does not intervene every time you choose evil. He's not going to do that, because if he did that, then your freedom is not going to be real. Number 2, since your freedom is real, it means what? If you choose to do wrong to somebody else, it is part of that freedom. But at the same time, like Nelson Mandela, if you choose to do something good, many people are blessed by that choice of good. But at the same time, if you choose to do evil, many people are cursed by it. And this starts with Adam and Eve. The 2 books of the Bible are very, very fascinating. They both start with a couple. And they start with an angel. It's very, very fascinating. Old Testament and New Testament. Lucifer means the one who carries the light. Lucifer, Lucis, light, the light bearer. So Lucifer is not the one who carries darkness. He's the one who bears the light. Why? Because he was an angel. He was an archangel. And so Lucifer, this angel, approaches Eve and says, do you think this is what God says? And Adam cooperates in that, with a false, in that false message. Then we go into the New Testament, we find again another angel who approaches a woman, but now this is not a fallen angel. And she listens, and another man cooperates in that process. And so we have a man and a woman who agree to, who disobey, or who agree with the devil, with evil, and evil spreads out. And then we have another woman and a man who agree with what is good, and because of them, the whole world is saved. So there are two processes of evil we see here. That evil is largely our choice. It's largely our choice. But it's also the consequence of freedom in a very big way. Because if, let's say, I'm dating Rosalind, or if I approach Rosalind and say, Rosalind, would you like to be my girlfriend? She has true love. That's the basis of true love. She has to have the chance to say yes or no. So if God created us and put us into heaven, that's like stealing a bride. I didn't have the chance. Who said I want to be in heaven? You know, God has to put us in a chance where we have to make a choice, really, whether we want to have to be in heaven. And that entails a real life situation or a live situation where the options of God and not God exist together. Right? And that's why evil exists. There's that, as far as I can tell. So there is that aspect of choice, as far as I can tell. And if you read the book of Genesis, earth is cursed. The earth is cursed because of the sin of human beings. Think of the climate crisis today. The scientists are telling us the climate crisis that we are going through is because of human activity. The earth is cursed in the Genesis because of human activity. That means human beings, because of their sin, also bring sinfulness and tragedy, you know, and that is it has a very spiritual dynamic as far as I can tell. And what that means is, if human beings were to consistently choose that which is good, evil would lose its power. But human beings don't want to consistently choose what is good. And that's what original sin does. Original sin is like God gave us eyes that can see properly. And then we choose to wear glasses that are orange and green. And so we don't see reality properly, and we keep choosing what is bad because we cannot see anymore properly because of our sin. And Jesus comes and says, okay, I can help you remove those glasses so that you can see things properly. And then we are like, okay, I just want to remove just that much. I don't want to remove the whole of it, you know, because it's too uncomfortable, right? Yeah, I don't know if I am getting, my answer is helpful. I'm trying not to be too academic as far as I can tell.
and so theology. So thank you very much, Dominic. So thank you very much, Dominic, for that answer. We have 8 minutes, and this 8 minutes, I won't allow you to go to the next point, but we'll now continue discussing the point that you've asked. And I don't think there is any question, but I'll just read whatever they're saying. But before that, let me ask. You see, the first point is our role is to seek Christ. And then now we come to role number 5, which is finding your value and voices. Finding your values and voices. And then is that role number 5 is finding your value,
finding identity and worth.
I'm talking of role number 4, finding your value and voices.
In voice.
Now, this is my own thinking. Don't you think that to some extent the church is hindering young people from getting these roles? For instance, I know people have been talking about dress code, because young people, they like fashion and they are fashionable. So unlike our parents or our grandparents, tuseme ile fashion yao ya hizo enzi can't fit the fashion of young people that we have today. And I like what Pope Francis said when he came to Kenya in 2015, that he said that he prefer a young lady with a miniskirt who has values and goes to church than a lady with a long dress who doesn't have value and doesn't go to church. But now back to my question, finding identity and worth. You go to some churches, and then because how you are dressed, how you've dressed, especially for ladies, you will be given some words, and at the end of it, you regret, why did I go to church? So you find that you lose that worth, you lose that identity that you had gone to see. What do you have to say about it?
Okay. So I'm not very sure if the first quote you refer to Pope Francis is his. I'm not very certain. Okay. But I see the logic of what you mean. I see the logic. I think one of the things that we might want to say is, yes, there is some truth. There's a lot of truth in the sense that we have to welcome people in the church. That's the marker. And the church is a place for sinners. So sometimes when people say, I cannot go to the church, there are too many hypocrites there. I'm like, well, that's where hypocrites are supposed to be, seeking God's mercy for their hypocrisy. So you will find lots of sinners. And that's why sometimes I tend to say, I don't think the Katiering Chaliwa parish at Nyananga church is the best option. Maybe he's going to church because he's a very sinful person. Sometimes if you date that person, you may end up, really being miserable. Anyway, sometimes that happens, no?
But your point now to Nakata.
I mean, I'm just saying it's anyway, going past that quickly. What I would say, yes, we need to welcome people, but at the same time, we need to have a sort of a decorum, We need to have a sort of a decorum as far as I can tell. Like, if you go to Kenya School of Law, there is a certain requirements for the lawyers in the way they dress. And it's nothing, your dressing does not make you a smart lawyer, but there's a certain decorum everywhere, right? But I would say the first instance is to welcome people. And then when we welcome them, we can explain to them why we dress the way we do. And we do it kindly, knowing that the church is not ours. I think the opposite happens is, first of all, we lay the rules, and then we say, okay, now you're welcome. Only if you do that, okay? I don't think, that is, I think for me, it's putting the cart before the horse, as we say. The first thing is to welcome people in all their shamelessness and in all their shamefulness and in all their inability to follow the rules. And then when they get to the church, you say, you're very welcome, and and this is what we do here, and we would very much like you to stay. And we make the people feel comfortable, and then we start to tell them slowly why they should act in this manner. Or, in fact, we encourage those who already know what the church is all about to dress in a manner that is proper, and then when the others see it, that we are very welcoming people and we dress properly, they might say, okay, maybe I should not go dressed like that. So that is witnessing that is all about. Okay, so that's what I would think for me in that in response to that question. I don't know if Ogaye and Opolo have something to ask. Oh yeah, William still had some questions.
Thank you. Not that I asked a question that I had answer, but I like the way you've raised your answer. That first, let us be accommodative in the. I think it's an encyclical, The Joy of Love. I know The Joy of Gospel. Around chapter 57, Pope Francis is saying that we have a church that is welcoming. And so if we have a church that is not really welcoming young people, the church that is sending young people away, then I'll agree with you that young people will now go for that option. Yeah. Now that we are not being welcomed here, then we go somewhere else where we feel that we will be welcome. Now, just briefly, and then we give Ogaya and Opolo. So Priscilla Wangoi is saying that she's tuned in from Kajiado Central. We have Brian Mosha, anasema Dawn Clinical Supervision and Counseling Consultancy is locked in. Thank you very much, Brian. He's the guy that we had last week, and they will be coming back very soon. And then we have Carolee. Carolee is saying, nani hapendi pesa? Nani hapendi kapesa? Unaona mumesmile kusikia contribution. William Kimaya, Sir John Botia, Cornelius and Roslyn. I don't know. I didn't smile. Mimi sija smile by them. And then Jacinta Mawai saying, haha, okay. I'm looking for a question somewhere. We have a question that is good. Now, good example. Okay, somebody is saying good example using your Miwani, Dominic. Okay, now Carolee is saying, even in micro, mini, and all cleavage out, then unaenda kupokea Holy Communion. Si priest atachanganyikiwa yawa. Okay, sawa. So I'm looking for a question is, okay, I don't know what she's asking, but she's asking, is it part of identifying a youth identity? But I think she was talking about dress code. Then Boniface Nerito is saying, good job. And Dumu, didn't he let Jesus suffer? It is just a test of faith in God's love testimonies. So those are the comments. So maybe Opolo, if you have a question and then or a comment, because I see our time is up.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Hey, Mr. Dominic. Sisi wengine umetufungua bwana. It's good that whatever you have given is really very rich, and that information is very powerful. And I know you have done only five of them, and the article you wrote here, they are about 12. And to me, from the first one to the fifth one, really informative. I think these are the things young people wanted to hear, and especially finding the value and the voices and finding identity. I think those are two things that young people are fighting with. And for you opening up and explaining and trying to break it down for them to understand, I think that's a plus. Maybe next time we'll think of more questions and ask more from young people themselves, so that we can discuss more, especially in 4 and 5, finding values and voices and finding identity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Apollo. For the first time, we are introducing Roslyn Ogai. She has never talked here, but the only word she has said is thank you. So, Roslyn, tunakaribisha Roslyn. She's now part of YGI. Roslyn, karibu.
Asante sana Kimaya. Thank you so much, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure meeting all of you here in this forum. So this is so good. On today's topic, I think I really missed a lot because I joined halfway, but for the part that I've managed to capture, Dominic, this is very good. I think you've really opened not only my eye, so I'll not use the glasses. Of course, he wasn't referring actually to those using the glasses, but that was really great. So one thing that I think of all the things that you've said, I think this is what most people and most churches, especially the Catholic Church, because that's where I am in, I think we're really fighting with this when it comes to dress code. And I think today you've really brought it out so well. The first thing is to welcome people. And this is, I think, this is a gospel that should be preached to even our CMAs, our CWs, our parents, the society at large. Welcome people before you start telling them the rules or imposing the rules on them. And also, it also matters a lot how you're going to do these. And that is why where Dominic said, be gentle, be kind with your words. So I think this is something that we really have to spread it back into our parishes as well, especially for those dealing with youth, because you know how it's been, especially on the part of dress code. Something that has really made my night. God does not dictate our destiny because it's given us a freedom. So you can either choose. It's not a must you go to heaven. It's a choice that you either decide to go to heaven or decide to go to hell. Wow, this is something to think about over the night. Thank you so much. It was a great discussion, and I hope those who've been following on our Facebook page have really gained enough. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and you're welcome for saying that. Just to clarify, when it comes to heaven or hell, it's not our actions really or our choice that makes us go there, but I'm talking about our destiny of how we, about how we orient, how we do that in the world. It's really us for us to choose. So yeah, thank you so much, Rosalind. I just want to clarify that because teachings of the church are tricky, and you need to say them properly in order not to confuse people. So yeah, thank you so much for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Dominic. Wait, Dominic. Roslyn. Roslyn, thank you very much. And also thank you very much, Bwana Opolo. And to all our viewers, thank you very much for keeping us company, asking questions and participating. I believe you've learned. And I see so many people are appreciating the good work that they're doing, saying that kudos, guys, next time have a YCA discussion at Dominic. So this part of YCA, because we are learning Catholic social teaching, so if YCA were not part of it, so next time tell them to tune in, they will learn. And then Margaret Gumo is saying very educative discussion. I have learned a lot. Pia mimi leo nimelearn a lot. I said at the beginning that I'm coming to learn, not to share, not to ask questions, but to learn. But for sure I've learned, and thank you very much, Dominic. Tunaomba Mungu azidi kubariki na hekima ili uzidi kuja kutufunza. So thank you guys, and Dominic, your last word as we conclude. Oh, sorry, let me apologize that last week I promised that we are going to have Omwami from Churchill Show, who was going to talk to us about comfort zone. And we decided to change because we saw that this point is very important, so that after learning the role, now we can go and learn about comfort zone. So we'll be having him next week, and the entire team will be present. So thank you very much. Have a good night. Dominic, karibu. Allah.
Have a good night. Thank you for listening to us. See you next time.
Thank you.